There aren't a lot of fruits that can grow in freezing temperatures, but this one can. It's called Paw Paw, and although it looks tropical, it survives weather as low as minus 30 degrees Celsius. Well, I always wanted to try this fruit, and when I got it, I immediately took 30 seeds to grow and the rest to make Paw Paw salad. Well, this is a Paw Paw fruit. It's got a tangy flavor, and to me, it tastes like a mango cherimoya papaya hybrid, which makes sense because it's from the same family as cherimoya and soursop. I was excited to taste it, and as I cut a thin line across the body of the fruit, I revealed the yellow flesh and inner dark oval-shaped seeds that I, as a Canadian, feel very excited to plant because of how well they do in freezing temperatures. But the reason you can't find them in stores is because they only last about 3 to 5 days after being picked from the tree, so they're too delicate to travel. So I felt lucky to have my PawPaws on North America's largest native fruit, even though it's actually pretty small and can fit in just the palm of my one hand. But it's safe to say, as pumped as I was to try it, I was dreaming of owning a homegrown pawpaw fruit tree. But before I dealt with the many seeds to grow, I figured it was time for a party on my taste buds with a fruit I had never tried before. Put it in my mouth. Pawpaw. Well, first I gave it a little sniff. Smelled very tropical. And then I put it in my mouth. I gave it a second, had to taste it, was a little bit confused at first, and then the results were that... Oh, tastes like banana, papaya, some sort of melon. And it really does taste like a mango cherimoya of sorts. Whoa. It's custardy, it's tangy, and the texture is so good, like a sweet mango. It's a bit yeasty, so it's got an aftertaste of a nice pale ale wheat beer. But I realized that only one of the pawpaws I opened up was fully ripened enough to have that sweet taste and creamy texture, and the other two tasted very hard, like an unripe mango that isn't really edible, you can't really chew it properly, and it doesn't taste very sweet.
This one wasn't as ripe, so let's try this one. Gummy. The one that's more ripe tastes better. Chewier, and the consistency is better.
At the time of opening these fruits up, I didn't know that, and I learned by tasting them and by researching a bit on this secretive fruit. The way this fruit is eaten in the wild is by ripping it open, slurping the pulp, and spitting out the seeds. Think tapioca spitballs? It was good, and I wanted more. Also, don't eat the skin or the seeds from a pawpaw. They are not edible.
Skin is toxic, so you're not supposed to eat that.
Honestly, I've only ever seen these once before in a high-end restaurant in Niagara Falls, and that is all the more reason to grow this into a tree. Well, now comes the good part, growing them. As I began to clean my seeds, well, basically just eat the fruit off the seeds to get them ready to sprout, I placed these seeds on a damp piece of paper to germinate, and believe it or not, but that was a year and a half ago, and I'm so excited to show you the results of my pawpaw that I planted. And if you're lucky enough to get your pawpaws on a pawpaw and you want to grow your own tree, this is exactly what you have to do. It is okay if you live in a cold, harsh environment because, as we learned, pawpaws survive in zones 5 to 9 in temperatures as low as minus 25 or minus 30 degrees Celsius. All you gotta do is get your seeds on a piece of damp paper towel, then you'll fold that paper towel up, seal it airtight in a baggie, or you can use a glass jar, and wait. Every couple of days you'll check your seeds to ensure the paper towel is still damp, and after about a month, your pawpaw seeds should sprout. But the thing with my seeds is that I couldn't get them to sprout, and they were sitting in that paper towel for an entire year. So after a year passed, I figured, okay, maybe these aren't gonna sprout. And lucky for me, I have a friend who's an expert in pawpaw trees, and he actually has many trees where he lives in London, Ontario. So he was able to save some seeds for me that he harvested from his homegrown pawpaws, and I was excited as heckin' to have these seeds because he also suggested to me a few tips that really helped and told me I should stratify the seeds so that they grow. And that just meant to put the seeds through a period of cold so that they could be kickstarted to grow. So I got to work, got my new seeds on a damp piece of paper towel, put them in a baggie airtight, labeled them, and then I put them in the fridge. Left them there for about 3 months. And what do you know? Hey, yeah! This worked! So if you're growing pawpaw, cold stratification may help to sprout the seeds, but once your seeds do sprout, they will look like little aliens, a little something like this. And honestly, the cold thing makes sense because when the pawpaw trees are living outside, the outdoor temperatures gradually start to decrease as winter comes, putting the tree through a process called cold acclimatization, and that prepares the tree for the freezing temperatures by adjusting the physiological and biochemical processes so that they survive. Well, the same happens with the seeds when they're trying to germinate, so the fridge really helped. But anywho, I was so excited I sprinted to my DMs to let my friend know that I successfully sprouted the seeds that he gave me. We had like 20 or 30 of them, enough to plant in separate pots, a bunch of them, and wait for them to grow. And at this point, it was about June last year, and the plants were living outside, they were thriving in the summer sun, and they did so well! Slowly but surely growing, and after about 5 months, they looked a little something like this. But winter was fast arriving, and these little plants were still so tiny, I figured, well, if I left them outside, they're such children, maybe they won't survive. So, even though they're supposed to live outside in the cold, I brought them inside to live under my grow lights for the winter. But I also kept one plant outside since we had so many little baby pawpaw plants. I wanted to see the difference and also see which plant grew better, give us options, maybe experiment a little bit, and so then I waited. I also forgot I planted one seed in my garden bin, so I had 2 outside and 1 inside. Well, patience is a virtue when it comes down to time, because the one living inside under the grow lights is having a little bit of a hard time, but she is okay, and she's gonna go back outside in the summer sun in just about 4 weeks or so I'm not really worried about her. The ones outside have shriveled up a bit. My friend is not gonna be very happy with me, but they're still alive and well, doing pretty good. And of course, that makes sense because they can survive the coldest of the cold. So during the winter months, no fruit is actually even gonna grow on the trees once they're even big enough because it's just too cold. The pawpaw trees go into something called dormancy during the winter months. Like other trees, they shed their leaves and their metabolic processes slow down, and that helps them conserve energy and withstand and survive the cold temperatures. But once the heat and sun come back in the fall, spring, and summer months, the tree begins to exit the dormancy stage and begin flowering, shooting out leaves, and fruiting. But of course, depending on the age of the tree, and the fruit should begin to grow after about 4 to 8 years. So patience, of course, is a virtue when it comes down to the pawpaw tree because it may take some years to establish before focusing energy on fruit production. Also, when it comes down to the fruit growing, usually pawpaw trees need another genetically different tree in order for lots of fruit to grow, so planting multiple trees together in the garden can improve the chances of successful pollination and fruit production so that they become compatible and have fruit children. Something like a papaya tree would be amazing for pawpaw fruit production, but you gotta just make sure you're in the right zone for papayas. But in just a few weeks, all of my plants will be back outside in the summer sun thriving again, and lucky for us Canadians, the winter hasn't been too harsh this year. It's been pretty bad, trust me, but it's not as bad as past years, okay? Anywho, all we have to do now is wait for another couple months until the spring arrives so that we can track the progress of our pawpaw plants and hopefully be able to plant them in the ground by the end of this summer. And now I'm wondering why we can't do this with all the tropical fruits there are, because I just want to have all the tropical trees in my backyard, even in the dead of the winter in Canada. And if you do get your hands on pawpaw, not all pawpaws are going to taste really good, so if you want to really enjoy the fruit, you must eat it when it's at its peak ripeness. Ideally, pawpaws are picked slightly underripe, and this allows you to get them before they drop and critters get to them and eat them. That's also why they're the ultimate secret fruit and so hard to find in local grocery stores, because they ripen so fast that they wouldn't even have time to make it to the stores. And even if they are picked underripe, they still ripen off the tree in just a couple days. That's why I never thought I'd get my pawpaws on one of these, because they've got such a short shelf life. But when it comes time to actually picking them, if you shake the tree slightly, some just fall off, then you know it's time to pick them. Then you can just leave them on the counter for a day or two until they get a little bit soft, kind of similar to the soft touch of an avocado or mango. If you don't want to shake the tree though, but you want to tell if your pawpaws are ripe or not, then you can take a look at the skin. The skin will turn from green to yellowish, and the blemishes of the fruit will also start to show a little bit more. The only other way to tell if a pawpaw is ripe is by smelling it. It should have a sweet tropical smell, but as long as it's soft to the touch and when you open it, it's got a creamy texture and sweet flavor, then you know it's ripe. But once the pawpaws are fully ripe, you can enjoy them fresh or be like some local farmers and use them in various recipes like smoothies, ice creams, cookies, cakes, puddings, or just enjoying it raw. It's really good. Mild or harsh environment, however cold it is where you live, you can grow pawpaw. So, the secret fruit that you need to grow is likely growing in a backyard near you, and it's such a unique fruit that I feel lucky I got to try, tasting and growing. But I'm even more excited to see what happens to our pawpaw tree in the coming months and years. So let me know if you have any pawpaw growing tips in the comments below. I will highly take them into consideration. I love you all so much. And don't forget, on this channel, we take the seeds from inside exotic fruits and grow them into full-blown houseplants that fruit. Today, featuring the dog dad of fruits, Paw Paw. Thank you so much for watching. It would mean the world to me if you didn't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Always know that I love you. And I'll see you next week.